Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I can see there's still a few people joining, so we'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Thanks. Morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. So I can see there's a few people joining, but we have got a lot to get through, so we'll get started if that's okay. Just so you know, there'll be a recording of this session available afterwards, so if there's anybody you want to share it with, please do. So thank you very much for joining us. This morning's session is all about getting the most out of Microsoft 365. If you don't know who we are Linear Software Solutions. We're a Southwest-based IT managed services provider and software developer, and we're also a Microsoft Gold partner. And because we're a Microsoft Gold partner, one of the things that we get asked a lot is how do organizations, how do businesses get the most out of the Microsoft 365 package that they give to their staff. It's an incredibly popular platform, and if you buy any of a whole different selection of license types, you get a whole load of Microsoft apps and services bundled in, but often users don't use everything. They use a small percentage of stuff. They use the stuff they know, but there's lots more there to discover and get value out of. So that's what today's session is about. It's to try and introduce you to a few things you might have missed if you've only just got started, or even if you've used 365 for a while, and just try to highlight some of the areas that you might be able to gain extra value from this fantastic platform. So today is in 4 parts. The first part is my colleague Tom's going to talk a little bit about the Office apps side of things, so particularly Office Online and the desktop version, because this is something that catches people out when they get started with 365. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how it's valuable to be able to use either or both. Naomi's going to talk to you a little bit about Microsoft Teams. It's become hugely popular in the last 18 months or so, but as people have picked it up, they've sort of learned as they've gone along, and there's a few extra sort of chat tricks and ways that you can get extra value out of Teams that you might not have spotted, so we'll bring those to your attention as well. I'm going to talk a bit about SharePoint and OneDrive, the storing of files and how to work collaboratively in a big team is something that catches a lot of people out, and they find it quite confusing to get started, so hopefully we can simplify that bit for you. And the last bit is security. We've got Lewis here from our cybersecurity team. 365 as a platform comes with a lot of security options built in, but there are actually ways to improve it to make it more secure, and make sure that your users are as safe as they can be. If you have any questions as we go along, there's a Q&A open, which you can submit questions to, and my team will be answering those as best they can in the background. And if there's any particularly interesting ones, we'll flag them at the end and just discuss them on the call. So I will hand over to Tom in just a second. If I just, that's that one. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. This is the sort of demo Windows desktop that we're going to be using for this morning's demonstration, and it's got two windows open on screen. The light one is me. This is me signed in as just as an admin user, but we've also got a second window open with signed in as a secondary user called Molly. And the reason that we do this is that sometimes it's helpful to be able to show you things from a second person's point of view. So you'll see what we mean by that in a minute, but just bear in mind that, imagine this is an organization. When you're on the light window, you're seeing it from my point of view, and when you're on the dark window, you're seeing it from a second user's point of view. So I'll hand over to Tom and we'll get started with a few bits on Microsoft Office.
Brilliant, thanks, Jonathan. Right, we're going to jump straight in. The first neat little feature that we're going to cover today is that of co-authoring. Just to give a bit of context so you guys know where we are. We're about to open the exact same Word document on screen here on both the admin and the Molly Clark user screens. For Microsoft Office documents saved on OneDrive or PowerPoint, multiple people can work together, whether that be on a Word document, as we are currently, an Excel spreadsheet, or a PowerPoint presentation. When everyone is working at the same time, that's called co-authoring. As you can see here, there are little profile bubbles at the top of the screen, which shows who is on the session editing simultaneously. As you can see, both Molly and the admin users are currently editing, thus displaying a coloured cursor to show where on the document each of the two are presently. And if you hover over that cursor, you can see the name of the co-author editing. We find that this function is most useful at times when people sort of centralise collaboration so that they can all contribute to separate sections on the same document. As we're currently demonstrating, if you make a change to the Word document on one user, it will show up on the screen of the other users that have accessed that document. We again think this is really very, very useful because it means that you don't have to circulate multiple copies of the same document within your organisation, as it's all centralised in one collaborative environment. Whilst you're co-authoring, there's also the opportunity to do mentions and comments. To simply add a comment, we select the comment button in the top menu of Word. Then we click where in the document we want to add the comment, and then select new in the now open comments drop-down box. As here, we can just type a description of the specific message about the document. It is worth mentioning that comments inserted by one user will again be seen by all other co-authors. If you want to leave a comment for a specific co-author, type @ and then pick the name you want to do from the drop-down list. Please bear in mind that if they don't already have permission to open the document, you'll be asked to provide that. Finally, you can right-click on the comment to edit, copy a link, or to fully resolve the comment, and thus remove it from the co-authored document. Now we're going to move on to the autosave capability. Autosave is a new feature available in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint for Microsoft 365 subscribers that every few seconds saves your file automatically as you work. The autosave feature is turned on by default for the web version, seen here by the saved icon next to the file name in the top left-hand side of the screen. However, if you go to the editing option and then open in Desktop app, it will open the document on the desktop version of Word for more advanced localized editing capabilities. Just to bear in mind, however, if you have opened it via the Web Office app, you are still editing that live version, and that any changes will be carried back to the original document, so just be warned for that. Finally, on this, we also have the ability to toggle the autosave feature on and off. This is available again at the top left-hand side of the app header. This essentially means that you can break out from the online live version of a document and save a local copy onto your PC or laptop. Well, that covers everything I've got to say today. I'll pass it back to Kevin. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks very much, Tom. So yeah, this two-sided Office Online, Office on the desktop is something that tends to catch people out when they get started because it looks very similar but slightly different. And so you might think, well, why do I need both? As we've shown, there's some advantages to the website and a few differences on the desktop side. So we'll just double back over those. As Tom's just shown you, the big advantage of Word Online, Excel Online, PowerPoint Online is that you can access them from anywhere, but you will need internet access to be able to do it. If you don't have internet access, then obviously you're cut off from those apps. The desktop apps you can still use on the desktop locally on your machine, even if you've got no internet access at all. You could still work on local copies of files. But if you do have internet access, then you can also synchronize changes back to the web copies. As Tom's just shown you, there's that auto-save feature on Word Online and Excel Online, PowerPoint Online. It's really helpful to be able to make those edits in real time and know that they're always being saved back. But on the desktop copy, you've got that little toggle switch at the top, and once you're aware of it, then you can decide to turn it off and save a local copy that you just work on privately if you want to. The online versions really come into their own with the co-authoring that Tom's just shown you. We find that the most helpful use of this is actually not working on documents where that need lots of shared input, but actually documents where everyone has to do their own little section. So, for example, if you're filling out big forms and everyone has to collaborate on the same document, it's helpful to be able to just put one copy in the cloud, give everybody access, and they can fill out their own bit individually. It's worth keeping in mind this issue of design. So on PowerPoint Online and PowerPoint on the desktop, everything is placed freely on the screen. That's really helpful because it means the designs are always consistent between the web and desktop versions. On platforms like Word, it's not quite so consistent. So you may notice that, particularly if you're doing a lot of artwork documents with shapes and images, the display is not necessarily always the same once you open it on the web. So that's just worth keeping in mind. You also get a lot more power tools if you're on the desktop client version. So in Word, for example, you get the ability to do mail merging and not on the online version. In PowerPoint Online, you can do animation, but it's a little bit slimmed down from what you get on the desktop version, which can do more complex stuff. Excel Online doesn't support macros, whereas the desktop client does. And the version of Teams that's online, you get a lot more camera displays when you're in meetings, whereas the web version is slightly slimmed down. And Teams is the big success story, really, of the last 18 months. There's been absolutely colossal take-up of Microsoft Teams. No prizes for guessing why. We absolutely love it. We think it's fantastic. It's really, really powerful for meetings and for internal communication, particularly, but also sharing screens with external clients. But if you've adopted Teams very quickly, you've probably missed a few things, and we're just going to show you some of those in a few seconds. Naomi's going to talk to you about a few particularly kind of power chat tools and things you might have missed. So I will hand over to Naomi.
Thanks, Jevon. So yeah, so most of you probably are familiar already with Teams. Obviously, like Jevon said, so many people have had to adopt using different ways of communication over the last 18 months, and Teams has been really useful tool for that. And because of that, they've actually done a lot of work on trying to actually provide updates and get things in line with what everyone needs. So we just wanted to cover a few things today. So just a few kind of next level chat skills which people might often miss when they're using Teams on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing is within Teams itself, obviously we've got set up here on our demo system a few different channels. So we've got a few teams and then channels within that. And the first thing we wanted to say was obviously the best way to actually have a channel where loads of people are actually viewing it is trying to get someone's attention within that channel. So one quick way of being able to do that is if we just wanted to bring Molly's attention to a comment, we could just do @Molly and it will search for everyone within your organisation, and we could write a message, and what that will do is actually prompt her then that she's had a message within a channel which she needs to read. So adding this on the admin user, if we then flip over to Molly's Teams, what that will do is she will just get a notification that she's been tagged in a comment, and it'll come up on her activity as well. So that's one helpful thing. Within the chat itself, so if we wanted to just move to chat, One thing we can also do is when you're having a conversation with someone, if you wanted to share a document perhaps, which we'll go through in a moment, or highlight a comment that's actually urgent, there's a few buttons just here underneath, and we've got this urgency kind of exclamation mark here. What that will allow you to do is select a few different options of how you want that message to actually be shared. So if you wanted to actually have an urgent message, so what this will mean is you will get that recipient then will get notified every 2 minutes for 20 minutes that they have an urgent message that they need to actually view and look at. So what that will do is on our screen here is show in just a red box. And when we look at Molly's just in a moment, she will get a load of red pings come up on her screen and notifications that she has an urgent message here, and she'll get constant reminders to actually read that message. So that's just one helpful thing if you need to get someone's attention. The other thing you can do is actually, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you wanted to just do, some other work while you're in Teams, is you can actually just pop out that chat. So there's a couple of options. You can click on the pop-out window here. You can actually just double click on the name, which is just a new feature that's just been added, or there's actually a pop-out chat feature on the actual conversation as well. And what that's easy to do then is you can just have a smaller screen which you can move around and carry on with work within Teams and carry on that conversation. There's another few things you can do. So when we're in the chat, when you have a whole load of conversations going on, just by these 3 dots here, you've got a few more options of things you can do with this conversation. So if we click on that one, we have a few options. So one thing we can do is also pop out the chat from here, but you can also mark this message as unread. So if you read a message, but you just want to come back to it later on, like you do in your emails or something like that, you can quickly do that. Or there's also an option to actually pin that conversation. So what that will do is if you have a whole load of conversations and chats going on, that will actually just pin that then to the top. So it's just easy to find next time. And you can also then just unpin it if you want to get it back down into the rest of the list. Another handy thing with having Teams chats is you can actually share documents. So we can just quite easily just drag, you can drag attachments, you can drag documents just into the field, and you can write a message if you want to. And this will then just give access to Molly then for this document. Someone's just asked in the Q&A actually is about, how do you share a document? This is one easy way of doing it so that both users then can actually use that document. So we can actually then open that document from both the admin and from Molly. And similarly to what my colleague Tom and Jevon said earlier about collaborative editing, you can do that then on this document. One handy thing you can do also in chat is there's just a conversation box, just a button just at the top here. What that allows you to do then is just bring up that chat on the right hand side of that document. So if you wanted to just carry on, having a quick chat about making edits and how you're going to amend that document, you can carry on doing that at the same time as actually having that document open within Teams itself. And that will be visible from both users' perspectives as well. Close that one down. So if we go back to Teams, as I said earlier, there's a few channels within the actual Teams that we've got set up, and within general here you can see there's a few tabs here just across the top. You can actually just add tabs if you want to, so this just makes it quite useful if you want a document to be a permanent feature of that channel. So we have a shared document here which has been added as a tab, and we can just make edits to this. If we look at the files, this document then would be able to be saved in the files section within that channel, and then you can just quite easily add that as a tab above. As well as adding Word documents and Excel and various things, there's loads and loads of other apps, most of which we've probably never heard of, but some are quite useful. You can also add just a website if you wanted to, a website link perhaps if you're working on something or need to bring someone's attention to something quickly. You could just add in a web address and you can actually pin that then as a tab at the top. So we're just adding in our website. and you do have to put the HTTPS in the front. And you can add that there. So we've just had issues there. I don't even know why that's not linking. It was working fine yesterday, so apologies for that. We did have the website linked on there, so that might be why it's not adding it properly, which is a bit strange. But you can add just the URL there, which is just handy if you need to link, maybe to a shop page or something like that. And although we recommend using Teams itself for meetings, you may sometimes still get invites to join maybe Zoom meetings or something like that. So on the left-hand side, there's another 3 dots. And what we can actually do here is add other apps and things to this left-hand menu. So we've recently added Zoom. If you're going to be attaching this and logging in for the first time, you'll get prompted for some sign-in details, but we've already created the login for this user. And what you can actually do here is then actually create meetings and schedule meetings from here. You can also accept invitations, and it's all done within Teams itself. So if we were just to schedule a meeting for later on today, it's quite handy then that the meetings there shown on screen. And if we actually look at the calendar, it then appears just like our other Teams meetings, which is just quite useful. And you can actually join the Zoom meeting with the link from that calendar appointment as well. So that's just a few things we wanted to show in Teams, and I will just hand over back to Jevon.
That's great. Thanks, Naomi. So yeah, already people have asked in the Q&A about shared files, and this is something that often people get confused about when they first get started. The golden rule that we teach everyone right from the outset is that there are 2 places you can put files. There's OneDrive and there's SharePoint. Teams is essentially an extension of SharePoint, but a bit more user friendly. The golden rule for those 2 places is that OneDrive is for your personal stuff and SharePoint is for shared stuff. Now you can break those rules later on, but to begin with, that's a good way of getting your head around it, and we'll just show you how that works. So if I open my page for portal.office.com, down the left-hand side, I've got my apps, and I can see OneDrive there, and I can also see SharePoint if it's enabled for me. If I open OneDrive, the view I get looks like this. So I get on the web just a set of folders with all my files in. And if you've never used OneDrive before, it's really, really simple to save stuff up to the cloud. All you do is go into a folder and drag in a document, or you can upload it manually from the web page. That document gets uploaded, and it's now saved in my OneDrive and backed up to a Microsoft Data Center. I could then open that document if I wanted to in Excel Online here, or I could, re-download it and open it somewhere else if I wanted to. Now that's quite straightforward if you're using the web all the time, but often the web view isn't that familiar to people. So you can also have the OneDrive client installed on your actual PC, which you can see down in the toolbar down here. And then you get a set of folders that are more familiar, a bit like you would with your documents, and you can access those files and they're automatically synced from the web. This is nice because it's actually the version of file storage that people are really familiar with. It's the one that everyone's seen before, and you are safe in the knowledge that anything you put in here is being synchronized back to the web version as long as you've got an internet connection. If you have this local version installed, you've also got the advantage of having a local copy, the last known best up-to-date copy, which you can carry around. So if you lose your internet access and you can no longer get to the web version, you've still got that local copy carried around with you. So this is the OneDrive setup that most people are familiar with, but actually there's an extra layer to this now called Files on Demand, which is really, really helpful. And it's worth just noting that if you've had OneDrive installed over the last year or so, you'll have noticed these little icons appearing next to your files. That green tick there next to this document refers to the fact that this document is saved on the web, and you've also got the local copy saved on your machine, and the 2 are in sync. But I've actually got some other files here that have just got little cloud pictures next to them instead. And what that means is that these are saved here only on the basis of Files on Demand. So these only exist on the web. I don't have a local copy. it will show me the folder and it will show me the file, but I don't actually have an offline copy available on this machine unless I go and get it. Now I can have that document anytime I like. All I do is double click on it and open it. And as long as I've got internet connection, OneDrive will go off and get it for me. There's the secret spreadsheet. And you'll notice that actually now I've accessed that file, I've now got the local version as well as the web version, and the two are in sync. Now, this is really handy because you can actually decide to relinquish the local copy if you don't want to have to carry all of your files around with you on your hard drive all the time. So for example, let's say I decided the secret spreadsheet was only going to live in the web and I didn't want to have a copy on my desktop as well. I can right click on it and I can say free up space, and that goes back to the little cloud to say that's now on the web only until I need it, until I want to go and get it. Now, this is handy if you've had to say send everyone home and transition to laptops, because you might not have big enough hard drives to hold everything, all of your files that are stashed in OneDrive. And so often what people now do is they say, well, I'm going to carry around copies of everything that I might need to use offline. So, presentations, really important documents, stuff like that, newer files rather than older files. And I'm going to have all of those with the green tick. I'm going to have the local copy and the web copy. But let's say I had a big folder full of old video files or meeting recordings that I don't want to be synchronizing to my local hard drive all the time. I could right click on them, say free up space, and then they're just saved in the web for me if I need them, and I can access them later on. So that's the OneDrive side. That's your personal files. As for the shared side, if SharePoint's enabled for you as a user, you'll find it here. And SharePoint acts a little bit like your old file server. So you might have had a big file server in the old days in a cupboard somewhere that multiple people had access to a shared drive, a shared location where you could put work. This is very, very similar, but essentially that shared file server is on the web in your 365 tenancy. So if I access SharePoint, this is an example of a SharePoint site, and you'll see I have a set of folders here, a bit like I do on OneDrive. It looks quite similar. We've given it different colors just to show that it's a shared site, but each of these folders contains files that I could have dragged in just like I did on OneDrive, that are then shared with other users who have access to this site. And you can control permissions if you want to, and keep certain people out of certain sets of folders. But let's just say, for example, that I've uploaded this Contoso project document that you saw earlier to this operations folder. All of my team are going to be looking at this folder and accessing this document and making their own edits. This is the way that a lot of people have gone, in the last 18 months, where everybody's had to access these things remotely, but work on the same shared stuff. There's a couple of controls you might have missed. One is the version history. So if I click the three dots next to the document, I've actually got down here an extra option which says version history. And the nice thing about this is that it actually lets me see all of the edits that have been made from all of those different users. So if I've got lots of people accessing this file or making changes or bringing it up to date, then I can actually scroll back through that history and see who made what changes and when. And even more helpfully, if I click next to the time, I can actually view the document as it was at that point in history, or I can say restore it to that version. So if somebody makes some unauthorized changes, or you decide you need to roll back time and go back to an old version, you can actually do that with something that's been saved in SharePoint for shared editing. The other really useful feature here is this Alert Me tool, which if you go down to Alert Me and you say, can you click on it? You can now create custom alerts for documents that's saved in SharePoint sites. So I can say, for example, I want SharePoint to alert me either by email or text message when a file changes and under what conditions it changes. So, for example, if if it was last modified by me and then someone changes it, I want an alert. I can have an alert for every change, or I can have a a summary of those alerts. And if I do set an alert on this document, those will come direct through to me by email, which is really handy if you've got a document that could be changed by lots of people in lots of places. So if I just jump across to my emails, I'm just going to go into Outlook Online, and I just search for Let's see, trying to get me started with a new email. You'll see that I receive an email a little bit like this when somebody actually goes and makes a change. So here's Molly changing a document, and I get notified that that file has been changed, and the date and time, and I can, go ahead and view the changes that she's made. So this brings us neatly on to an important issue with Microsoft 365, which is the security of the whole tenancy. We've covered a whole bunch of different types of data today. There's a whole load of different stuff in there. It's potentially the sort of backbone of the IT of your organization. And so although there's lots of security options in there, actually, there's a ways of making sure that your Microsoft 365 accounts are as secure as they can be. So I'm just going to pass over to Lewis, who's going to talk about ways you can strengthen that security.
Thanks, Jevon. Wait for the slides. So Microsoft 365 is designed to be secure. The whole environment within Office 365 has the basic security to protect your data. However, there's some things which we're going to go through in the next slides which your IT team can do or change on request to help secure or make your data more secure. Office 365 uses secure protocols, so that's when communicating with files or accessing the web environment over HTTPS or using emails. They don't use unsecure, weak, unencrypted connections. Also within Office 365, audit login is available, and this can be controlled from the Protection Center. So everything can be logged. So every time Jevon accesses a file or Molly accesses a file, you can see that. You can see where they signed in from, what device they were using, and what time. So that's really helpful if you're trying to track an issue inside the organization. Although they're basic security controls, within Microsoft 365 you can also secure it further. This includes controls such as multi-factor authentication, looking at advanced features within the Security Compliance Center and working on improving your secure score, and then overall how to improve your email security. First of all, multi-factor authentication is a way to prove who you are. It allows for, when you log in, to make sure you are who you say you are. So this is the same for when you go to make a card payment. Nowadays, you either need your phone and your face, or you need your card and your PIN. This is the same thing, but online. MFA has changed over the years, so it started off very simple with text and email alerts. So that's what you can see on the screen there, on the message output on the mobile phone, where you get a code to sign in once you logged in to make sure it's you. Obviously, you can't log in without your mobile phone, so that mobile phone needs to be present on you. As times evolved, we've now moved over to token-based authentication using apps and services that you can see on the left-hand screen. So this is using things such as Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, and Authy. The main point of multi-factor authentication is it prevents unauthorized access to your account. Without that layer, even if your password gets compromised, they can't log in because they don't have your phone or that code present. Microsoft multi-factor authentication can be turned on in all Office 365 tenants. Various licensing plans could be different features within multi-factor authentication, but it mainly can now be found in Azure Active Directory. If you need help enabling multi-factor authentication, contact your IT team today, and we can talk you through the steps necessary to do that. So as Office 365 has grown, security controls used to be all over the place. Now they're all in one control center, so it makes it easy for the IT admin to access. This includes a multitude of different systems and protection mechanisms that you can use as an admin user in your organization, or your IT team can manage. So we'll just talk about a couple of them. So we've already mentioned audit login, so that's the tracking of everyone's data. Similarly, if you delete a file, Office 365 has a 30-day retention policy by default. That means if someone deletes a file, you can recover it within 30 days, your admin can recover it within 60 days, and Microsoft can delete it within 90. We'll cover it in the 90, sorry. If it's outside of that, the data's gone, but within the Microsoft Security and Compliance Center, you can then change those retention policies to either keep data for longer or keep different types of data. Within the Compliance Center, there's also sections about email security. This allows you to configure anti-spam, anti-malware policies built in within Office 365. Although these are there by default, some of them, and it will block certain phishing emails. By configuring these extra policies, this gives you extra control. Similarly, if you were to have a breach through one of the phishing emails, you can then use incident management within Microsoft 365 Compliance Center to track your breach or to find out how it happened. And using the tool, you can then, it helps you go through and work out where it happened or shows you what happened if you put in certain users. Each of the admin centers for the apps within Office 365, you can set permissions. That includes what people can access data or what users can access certain elements. For example, if you wanted to disable team chat in an organization, you can turn that off within the individual admin centers. But then within the Security and Compliance Center, you can then view what the status of your whole organization is through reports. As well as that, there's a report on Secure School, and we're going to dive into that in a minute. But that gives you an overall score for your organization. So Secure School is a way so you can keep track of your security as an organization. This includes changes over time. So by default, when you go into Office 365, Office 365 will give you a secure score. It's normally quite low because you haven't enabled any of the features that they want you to yet. Over time, you can then work on that secure to improve your security, and it will give you recommendations of how you can do that. Some of those things are quite easy to fix, such as enabling multi-factor authentication. However, other of them are a bit more complicated and require further licensing. The idea of the score is the higher the score, the better, and it also compares you against other organizations within Office 365. So it gives you a proper breakdown of where you are with your security. The recommendations can be quite complex for an individual user going into that portal. So it's recommended that if you wanted to look at Secure Score in more detail and see how you wanted to improve, you can speak to your IT team, and then we can walk you through it or tell you what you need to do to improve. And just a side note, it can also be found in the Microsoft Defender dashboard. As well as the tools within Office 365, we also recommend that an email threat scan is conducted. So we do that using a partner called Barracuda, and they run our email security solutions, such as an email firewall. And this threat tool runs across your whole organization as a good way to benchmark yourself to work out how secure your organization is or how many phishing emails you have received. So the tool works to scan every mailbox in the domain to find threats, and then after the report's ran, you get a nice load of information to find out who's susceptible to phishing emails, what type of emails you receive, where they come from, and how that trend has changed over time. The scan could take up to 24 hours to run, but it ultimately depends on the size of the organisation and mailboxes. And if that's something you're interested in or want us to show you, we can show you how to do that if you contact us.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Lewis. If you're interested in Microsoft 365 and you want to do some further reading, first and foremost, thank you for attending the session. We'd be very grateful for any feedback via linode.co.uk/training feedback. If you do want to learn a bit more, we've assembled an ultimate guide to Microsoft Teams that we've sort of gathered from lots of different resources, both provided by Microsoft and some great stuff from third parties. In the Ultimate Guide to Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Learn has hundreds and hundreds of hours of training courses in subsets of this, individual apps, how to use all sorts of different services. Some really great videos and stuff you can go and work through for free on that website, as well as paid certifications. And there's a guide on our website called Understanding Microsoft 365 Licensing, which is a handy sort of chart to try and get your head around all the different plans and whatnot that are provided. So if anyone has any questions, please do put them in the Q&A. Naomi, were there any particularly interesting ones that came out from?
Yeah, so one person's asked about recording. So of course there will be a recording that will be available, and we'll get that sent out after this meeting. There was one person who was asking about calls, and is it possible to make calls with a client if they have Teams and are expecting a call but without scheduling an appointment? Our colleague Matt has replied, but basically, yes, it does rely on permissions in both your client and your own environment. But if you're able to send them a chat message and they can reply, then you can get the option then to call. Obviously, people outside your organisation, it's always handy to just set up a meeting, and that's what we kind of do internally. But that is the easiest way. But also, if you want to make a voice call, Teams does support both inbound and outbound PSTN calling, so this can act as your phone system if you wish it to. You can call any number directly from the calls button on the left of the window, but this is an add-on subscription. But with everything going on at the moment and people working remotely from home, that is becoming quite popular at the moment. But I think that's everything. We've answered about shared documents. I think the other thing was about how to actually enable co-authoring, and is it automatic? I'll let Jevon answer that one.
Yes, yeah, that's certainly live if you're using a shared document on the online versions of the app. So it's just that you both need a login and access to that file. So if it's in a SharePoint site you both have access to, or you've shared it with that person, like we showed in Teams, then you can both access that and make changes.
That's it at the moment, unless anyone else has any other questions. Please feel free to write them in now. No.
Okay. To the end. Okay, well that's great. Thank you very much everybody for your time. If there's any questions at all that we've not already answered, please do get back in touch. And we'll happily go over them. As we said, there'll be a recording available soon, and we'll do some more sessions like this in the future as well.